Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am delighted that you are here with me today on a topic we have not covered on the podcast so far. So you're not going to want to miss this episode. I'm so excited to talk about highly sensitive people. And you may think, well, that doesn't really apply to me, but you're going to have to listen to the whole episode and then decide, maybe it's you, maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's your child, maybe it's somebody really special in your life. So you're going to want to listen to the whole thing. And I'm just excited we have a new topic. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my guest, Rachel Butler, and then I'm going to have you come in and tell us how to pronounce your last name. Rachel.
Sure. So long story short, if you're Southern like me, it's Dorneanu. If you're Romanian and fancy, it's Dorneanu.
I love it. We did this when we first got on the call.
Yes.
I was like, let's do this where you come in and say your last name.
Absolutely.
Makes it more conversational. Okay, your LPC, NCC, which is basically licensure for being a psychotherapist, if you don't know all the acronyms, which is an individual and premarital couple psychotherapist. She works with ages 16 and up. Her specialties include anxiety, assertiveness. I love that. Most people don't put that in their bio. Highly sensitive people, which the acronym for that, if we use it today, is HSP, concerns perfectionism, premarital counseling, which I love. And I drugged my husband to 2 months into dating.
Good.
She offers online sessions for Georgia residents and makes therapy convenient and easy to fit into your busy life. Clients that work with her appreciate her humor and straightforward, adaptable approach. And they like that she meets them where they are and work on their goals together. So welcome, Rachel, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited. We already hit it off like at the very beginning. We're both like, we're sweating. So here we are. Let's jump in and talk about highly sensitive people. What is a highly sensitive person for those that don't know?
Sure. So this is based on my personal life as an HSP, highly sensitive person. So for me, it's typically really empathetic and sensitive, like not just, highly sensitive of, oh, she's just sensitive, get over it. No. We don't do this here. That is more of, you are really in tune to different details and changes and subtleties in your environment. That may be loud noises, itchy fabrics. It's all sorts of different senses that you may be extra sensitive to. And so the fun fact is that I believe it was like 20% in the world, a decent amount, but not a ton of people. 20% in the world has this trait. And so it's a personality trait. Nothing's wrong with you. It's not a disorder, I promise. There's tons of research on it. But it's basically just a really cool trait that we can have as an HSP, that you're really in tune with who you are and you probably survived really well based on evolution.
How did you discover I'm a highly sensitive person?
I always knew something was going on for me that was a little extra on edge or a little sensitive, a little extra empathic in a way. But then I discovered, I want to say summer of 2020, so perfect timing, COVID, that something feels extra off now that I'm not able to go and keep my same routine. So I started researching it and found out, oh, wow, okay, so I have a really high score on the HSP test. You can do that. I can link the online little quiz, and it's so helpful if you guys want to take it. But I took that. I was like, well, that's me to a T. Okay. And so I knew that most of my clients were kind of similar people. I ended up getting the training, and I've been obsessed truly since summer of 2020. So it's been fantastic.
So you really discovered it later in life. Like,
I did.
Oh, what is happening since I'm off my daily routine?
Mm-hmm.
And you took the checklist and they're like, oh, I am a highly sensitive person. And then what have you learned about coping with it since?
Sure. So, gosh, so many things. One, the training, if any therapists are listening, the training's fantastic. Please do it. Highly recommend. But the things that have been so helpful for me has been to find other HSP individuals in my life and be able to talk with them. So like, I know that my mom is HSP as well. She has a higher score than I do, bless her heart. And so we talk about it and we're like, oh, okay. So routines are lovely. If we're off our routine, oof, look out. If we're around a lot of people, maybe not just introverted, but our total social battery is completely drained really quickly. So being aware of surroundings, being aware of, oh, that tag on my shirt's really itchy. I should probably take that out, rather than it's uncomfortable. It's your whole mind is consumed with it. So knowing those things and be like, you know what? That feels like that's going to be itchy. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to keep a routine. I'm going to make sure I have a good schedule. You should see my Google Calendar is color coded beautifully. But being able to have everything in a format that works for me, but also communicating that with other people of, hey, I'm feeling off. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's an HSP thing, but this is what's going on for me right now. And they usually are really respectful, especially my husband is so sweet. And he's like, cool, got it. Okay, what do we need to do? Let's do it. So communicating is a big piece too.
And naming it. It sounds like naming it, acknowledging it, and then sharing that with your partner or your family. I love this quiz idea. I'll put it in the show notes. So if anyone wants to take the quiz, that would be great. I think I have 2 kids that are HSP, and I have for a long time thought that. Okay. The sensitive to sounds, noise, environment, and they've learned to kind of cope with it. What are some healthy coping strategies that you teach people that are HSPs?
Sure. So just going off of your kids alone, the things that stick out to me, because I know loud noises for me are intense, that I'll get some earplugs, like, the clear waxy ones that you can kind of mold and put in your ears. You can do that. You can still hear things. You're still aware of what's going on. But if you're going to be at a loud concert, if you're going to be, let's say Costco on Black Friday. Wow. You want to talk about overstimulating? That is like my nightmare. Doing that, put in earplugs, your shopping list, you're good to go. So having that, I'm a big fan of to-do lists. So that way it's not, wow, I'm walking through Costco and I am terrified because it is so many aisles, so many things to be overwhelmed by, and interacting with people and blah, 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 blah. It's, I have my list. I'm good. I'm going to follow it, check out, go home and recover. So if that helps to have a list, I'm a really big fan of the Todoist app. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
You're able to share it with multiple people and have a little to-do list together and share them and check them off. Very type A if you can't tell, but it's super helpful. So earplugs, list, let's see, having good routines, defining like your morning routine, after work routine to decompress, winding down before you go to bed. Let's see, making sure you don't, like, even if the clothes or the trends are really cute, because I love shopping as a problem. But if you're going to see this cute trend, but then it's really itchy fabric, please don't get it. You're going to hate it. You'll never wear it. And then you wasted money. So get the things that are comfortable, maybe even getting shirts that are, 10 different colors, but it's the same shirt. Cool. That works for kids too.
Yes. How about empaths, like the empathic part? Where you kind of shared that you almost overly, is that what you like? Would you say overly empathic? Share a little bit about that and how it impacts you and how to cope with that.
Absolutely. So every person is different that has the HSP trait. They can have a very small amount of some of these things and a really big amount of others. So for me personally, and some of my clients as well, is that we're not just aware of what someone's going through or having sympathy. It's you truly may take on those feelings of, oh, wow, that was a heavy story. That was really intense. Maybe we cry with them. Maybe we are just really, you feel that heaviness of when you hear a heavy story. It just depends on what's going on. So one, being aware that that's happening is huge. Awareness, mindfulness, all of that. But then the other thing is labeling it, like you said, of, this is an empathic moment. This is an HSP moment. This is hard. Okay. And so, especially if it's for a client as HSP as well, those are my favorite sessions ever. It's being able to just interact with somebody that feels the same thing is so, so cool. But the things that are helpful is to notice it, label it, say it out loud, do some deep breathing. We did some deep breathing before we started our episode today, and it was so wonderful. Let's see, what else can you do? Journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling. Getting it out of your head and on paper is so helpful, especially for HSPs, because you always have so much going on and all your thoughts are going and racing. It's really intense. Just, we're breathing. We wrote it down. We're good. If you need to find somebody that you really trust, that's a good support person in your network, talk with them, process it with them. I mean, also that's why we're therapists and we're really good at that. But those are some of the big things that can be helpful with being empathic.
How does it impact you in relationships, being an HSP? Like, how do you work with people and how it really impacts dynamics?
Let's see. The things that stick out to me the most in terms of relationships and that kind of thing would be making sure that you're, again, aware. I'm a big fan of mindfulness, but also telling your partner early of, hey, this is something that's going on for me. If you already know that you're an HSP, if not, take the quiz together. It's cute. It's free. Why not? But to be able to communicate, one, having great communication skills of this is what's going on for me. I'm having a tough time. Making sure that your partner's aware and educated of, okay, so when we're in Costco, going up and down the aisles and it's too much, can you give me like a signal, some kind of like double snap? What do you need to make sure we can kind of calm and get you re-regulated? So making sure that there's good communication skills, but also in terms of conflict, because a lot of the premarital couples I work with, I love them. They're my favorite people. They're happy couples. That being able to talk with them and teach them, look, I statements are so important. I'm feeling frazzled when we're late to a dinner reservation, and I need us to be on time so I can be calm, collected, and enjoy our time together. That statement, those like I feel statements from, I believe it's Gottman, obsessed with Gottman, that to be able to have those I feel statements is so important, and to let the partners where I'm coming from. I'm not saying like, you made us late, you're horrible. No, please don't be critical of your partner. It's not going to help anybody. But just doing those I feel statements and then saying, I need blah, 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 that can solve a lot of little instances with couples.
It's so important. I teach couples that same thing. And then I add in the story I make up, which is what you think they think of you.
Oh,
so the
fun.
story I'm making up is you think I'm way too sensitive. And is that a story that runs often for HSPs?
All the time. All the time.
Tell me how to work through the shame stories, because those can take over so quickly.
Oh, 100%. I think so. To make sure I'm understanding is that the HSP client you might be working with is saying that you think I'm too sensitive. So
they might say that to their part. So if we're doing couples therapy and they're, going to use your Costco example, like I need to be on time, that you're making that request. I always have them add in the shame story, because the shame story is really what blocks them from connection, because they've already projected that shame story of, let's say, you think I'm too sensitive. You think I'm too much. You think I can't handle things. I'm making up the story, but I'm believing that's what my partner believes about me.
Oh, it breaks my heart for them to say that.
Yeah. Happens all the time with couples and in general with people. We project all the time about what we think people think of us. So if we're like, well, they can go into Costco and not have any issues. What's wrong with me? There must be that's that shame story. There must be something wrong with me because everyone else looks like they're enjoying Black Friday at Costco.
Right. I mean, I don't know how many people enjoy it, but
we project, right? The story in comparison of what's wrong with me when everyone else seems to be able to handle it. So how do you help HSPs work through that shame story they may or may not have?
So for me, and keeping in mind that every therapist is different, I'm definitely more of a CBT, challenging thoughts, affirmations, reframing. How can we be kinder to ourselves? Because I also work with perfectionists all the time. And there's a really big tie between HSPs and perfectionists, because we want to be able to perfect our routine, perfect our something so that we don't feel as sensitive. It's wild. So what I'll tell them is, look, awareness is important, but also let's try and find a way to rewrite your story. So a bit of like a narrative piece of, I know that you've noticed this for so long, or in these instances, this is how it feels for you. We can validate that. It's okay to feel that way because it's how you're feeling. But also knowing that how you're talking to yourself is so impactful of, you're too sensitive. You're doing too much. How can you do this? X, Y, and Z. That can we turn it on ourselves? Because I feel like self-talk is so important. And also be able to let your partner know, hey, I'm really trying to work on this. I don't know if this is how you feel, but this is how I feel that you might feel if that all followed and tracked. So being able to say something of, I'm aware that I'm sensitive about this. This is who I am. I am setting things in place to make sure that I can take care of myself, my sanity, my emotion regulation, my interactions with other people, especially my partner, and helping to know that they're working on it, but also not that HSP is something to be a bad thing. That I am working on finding ways to make this comfortable for me and adjusting my environment and my surroundings to be okay for me. that's how I'm working on it. Not of, I need to shut down these things and push down these emotions and ignore the shame and everything else is coming up for me. That's not going to help anybody, because then it boils and then it's too much, right? So taking the time to communicate that and work on your self-compassion, self-kindness towards yourself is something that I really try and do. And lots of affirmations as well of, I am sensitive and I'm okay. I'm strong because of my HSP abilities, those kind of things.
Yeah, I think the piece about really acknowledging and owning your own process. And then based on that, then you're communicating, these are the needs, and this is what I'm going to do for myself to meet my own needs.
Exactly.
And then you're communicating that. So that's kind of the framework of owning that, but acknowledging with tenderness and kindness and nurturing that part and seeing the gifts that it offers you. Talk a little bit about, you made the connection between perfectionism and highly sensitive people. Can you share more about that connection?
Oh, absolutely. So as a recovering perfectionist, highly sensitive person, a tad anxious, all the things, it's funny how therapists tend to work with people that are like them. That the things that I've noticed, and also from the research and things that I've found as well, is just that when you're a highly sensitive person, you so need routine, you so need things to feel okay in your mind and your environment, whatever it might be. And then when you can't control those things, like people, environment at Costco, wherever it might be, things that are bigger than you, because unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over life, which really sucks. But being able to acknowledge that is important. And some of those affirmation things, the mantras, intentions of, I'm going into Costco and I have absolutely no control over what happens. I may run my buggy into somebody. Okay, it's okay. I don't have to do it perfectly. The other person isn't doing it perfectly either. That being aware of all those little tendencies, and I'm not saying to journal and nitpick yourself to death. Please don't. It's exhausting. But to be aware of the things that really trigger you, that really set you off, of whether it's control, of interacting with a certain someone, of, let's say that your morning routine, if you happen to get your makeup brush fell into the sink, it might feel like the end of the world in the moment. I'm never going to say don't feel that way. But to be aware that the makeup brush in the sink is not the end of the world, is not going to throw off your whole day. So as an HSP, you might be saying, oh, that was a lot. Wow. Okay. It didn't go the way I wanted to, but so now my whole day is ruined and there's going to be a giant snowball effect. Not necessarily. Pretty unlikely. So being aware of those things and kind of challenging your thinking as well is really, really important. Does that help?
Yes. And I'm wondering the birthplace of HSP. Is it nature versus nurture? Because I'm a trauma trained therapist. So we look at how much does trauma contribute to how our nervous system shows up.
Absolutely.
And is there a connection between trauma and HSP, whether it's birthplace, maybe in utero trauma, maybe a hard delivery in the delivery room, maybe a medical trauma that happened, along the younger years of life? Is there any research on the link between the two?
There is. And I wish I could quote all the lovely things I could find about that. I think it kind of depends. There's a bit of nature and a bit of nurture. It really depends on what's going on for the person. I know that for my mom, for example, very highly sensitive, that was passed down, guaranteed. But also knowing that depending on life circumstances, the trauma piece that you mentioned, whether it's in utero, small bits when you were little, it can add up over time. So it can be a bit of both. If I can find the really good research bits, I'll send it your way. You can put it in the show notes, but it can be really intense. And I think a big piece of that is also being aware of your attachment style in terms of HSP. Of if you're aware that you tend to be really anxious or really avoidant or disorganized or whatever other attachment styles there are, because there's a lot out in the world right now. But to be aware of that is really important, and to be able to find a really awesome trauma-informed therapist to work through some of that is really important. So the fun thing, I don't know if you've had a chance to research all the fun things yet, but a lot of therapy clients, especially therapy clients, but anyone on this self-healing journey, tend to be HSP because they're aware something's off. It's fascinating.
Yeah, the awareness. As a child, what do you remember about being an HSP? I know you recently, 2022, just kind of discovered it, but as you reflect back on your childhood, what did you notice for yourself that gave you some indication that, okay, I'm HSP now? Like, walk us through some of those things.
Sure. The things for me personally that really stick out are the itchy fabrics. I remember hating going shopping. truly dreaded it. If it was like really itchy wool sweaters, done for. Tantrum, not okay. If it was, so itchy fabrics, really loud noises like a siren would really throw me off and rattle me and startle me. I still get scared really easily. Like if someone sneaks up behind me, not okay. So being really startled easily. The other things that stick out is being really sensitive to different kinds of textures. So like maybe watermelon. I hate watermelon. I would love to love it. There's something just off and is not a fan. So being aware of those little bits. The other things that stick out is I remember being and this is not to be braggy by any means, just to be like a really great friend, that when I had friends, they were like, oh, she's the supporter. She's the mom of the group. She's the listener, the shoulder to cry on. And that still happens today, that I mean, obviously I became the therapist of the group, but being able to notice those things, especially when I was little, is also part of like what put me on my journey to become a therapist anyway. So that worked out really well, but also just to be aware of those little bits with friends of, wow, I really understand where they're coming from. I'm really engaged and I like how I feel being able to interact with this person. But those are some of those little moments when I was little that stick out.
Was perfectionism part of it for you too?
100%. 100%. Absolutely. Very high achieving in school, had to get straight A's, had to have my papers perfect for me to turn them in. Always had to make sure I turned in things early. That still happened in grad school, that I set this goal for myself that I will turn in this giant 20-page research paper early because that's what my standard was. When in reality, that is ridiculous. That was too much. So that has been like academics, but also with perfectionism, it can be appearance. It can be your professional accomplishments. It can be your environment. If you need to have things on your desk just so, if you need your life to be picture perfect on the cover of a magazine all the time of having this mask of perfection, it can affect a lot of your life.
Yeah. And then your stuff. Like I know like people want their stuff a certain way and that they don't want other people touching their stuff.
Oh,
Is that part of it too?
100%.
You said environment.
Something
that
gets thrown off.
That.
Absolutely. And so keeping in mind that there's a difference between OCD and perfectionism, but there's also perfectionism underneath OCD. So that could be a whole nother episode. But just being aware that you may have some of those tendencies, but keeping in mind just because you want things just so does not mean that you have OCD. Please do not self-diagnose yourself. Just be aware of things. And then if you need someone to process it with, like a therapist, then that's a great place to start.
I think that's a really good distinction. Are there thoughts, like, let's talk about the thoughts around HSP, because what are some of the thought processes for HSP?
Sure. Well, loaded question.
I know. Like, not just to give you a big question.
So the thought processes, it can be most of your life. It could be all consuming all day, which is not ideal, but it could be surrounding the relationship. It become a tad obsessive, if you want to call it that, about, well, I need things to be just right. I need to make sure I say the certain thing, or I put this person on a pedestal, or something's not right. And I need to find out what that is and investigate and dig and dig and dig and dig and dig. That it can become really intense if it's relationship related, if it's with certain textures of avoiding a lot of things in your life, that can become a concern as well. So it just depends on what's going on in your head. The people that I've worked with that are HSPs, the main thought processes are typically relationship stuff, but also a lot of it is just them, of it's that inner bits that they're processing of, okay, well, I feel like my heart's racing really fast. And therefore they go into therapy saying, well, I have anxiety. Okay, it is a possibility. You also may be just really hyper-focused and really, really, really aware of your body processes. So it's a lot of that inner working, those thoughts. If I notice I had a thought about the thought, and all that hyper-focusing, that's what a lot of people I've been working with.
Yeah, because I notice the smells of products, like whether it's shampoo, conditioner, a smell in a room can also activate the nervous system in a certain way, or like lotions. A certain lotion can feel really soothing, or another lotion can feel like, get it off me. I found people can be really sensitive to that, even like those types of textures. Absolutely. And then you mentioned the food texture. Like there's something about, like for you, watermelon, certain textures where someone's like, I just can't. I can't tolerate that in my nervous system. Are those big components of HSP?
It is. It's anything that has to do with the senses.
Yeah.
So if it's touch, if it's sense, if it's sound, smells, taste, I don't know if I'm missing any other senses, that everything's included with being HSP. It's not necessarily just one bit. And so everybody's different. Some people really love watermelon. I love that for them. Congrats. Not my thing.
Not your thing. Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, it's on a continuum and everybody has different textures or smells or sounds or even sights that may overwhelm them. And it's important to be self-aware enough to kind of do that exploration with curiosity and compassionate curiosity about, oh, I get activated or I get triggered by a certain sound, loud sounds, crowds, whatever textures, whatever that is for you. And then is it helpful to make a list to be more self-aware?
It is. It depends. I think the biggest thing is knowing that if you know that you have that list of triggers and it's going to be something that you obsess over of, did I interact with any of these things today? Oh my gosh, I interacted with that. Oh no, what did I do? My day is ruined. Probably not very helpful. If it's more of just having that list to be aware that, okay, my day felt really off. What was going on? Got it. I had watermelon. Okay, that's what threw me off that in that moment. Not that it was catastrophizing and into my whole day, just in that moment, didn't feel right. But one thing I wanted to mention, you brought up a really good point of intense things that you might see that I know for me, watching Game of Thrones, not okay after a certain point of the night. So I'll end up having vivid nightmares or something will really affect me. If I see a really gory, violent scene, my whole inner being feels off. So being aware of when you watch things, if something is too much, maybe, I don't know, was it House of Dragon? I think that's the new spinoff of Game of Thrones. I know I can't watch that anymore. I tried. I wanted to be cool and watch it. It's too much for me, and that's okay.
That's so good. You know that about your nervous system. When my daughter was little, she would watch Dora the Explorer, which seems pretty benign, like not a big deal. She could not, it just jolted her nervous system and she became more aggressive because Dora was a little, we would deem like authoritarian in her approach.
I hear that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so all of a sudden I was like, what happened? She's very sensitive to the environment and she knows that about herself now. And there's an empowerment that comes with that. Absolutely. Now she has coping skills. She knows how to tolerate more. She knows how to handle more. And EMDR has been really helpful for her as well, which EMDR is eye movement. For those that don't know, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And that's another form of working through the associations that may be from that, or just taking that intensity down. It doesn't erase it. It makes it more tolerable.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm a big fan of EMDR. I don't personally do it, but I'm obsessed.
We love it. Our whole practice of clinicians does it. I'm a huge fan. There's brain spotting, somatic experiencing. I mean, there's lots of other modalities that I think can be helpful too. I mean, you mentioned CBT, and there's lots of ways, I think, to tend to the nerve, but it impacts the nervous system.
100%.
That's really important point, I think, when we're talking about HSP and the nervous system and connecting to your nervous system. Would you say that's an important component?
Absolutely. Something that I teach a lot of my clients in first couple of sessions is the window of tolerance, of being aware of your hyperarousal, your hypoarousal. So if you're really fight or flight, or if you're in freeze, knowing those things about yourself, how would you describe it to yourself or to somebody else when you're in those moments of normalcy or whatever else? Being able to notice the levels you hit before you freeze, the levels you hit before you go into the fight or flight mode. I cover so much of that to make sure that maybe for one person, you don't even hit hyperarousal. Someone that's not an HSP might not even notice that. But for you, you know that you're thrown off more quickly. So being aware of those bits is really, really important.
How does someone develop boundaries for themselves around what they can handle, what they can't handle and tolerate? What are some suggestions with boundaries?
Sure. So the things that I would start with, and this is just my personal way of doing things, is to do a couple of things. I kind of do this bullseye activity with all my clients. If so, what is the thing that you're really, really comfortable with in terms of sharing with other people, of interacting with yourself? So something, that cute little basic comfort zone, and then a little bit further out and a little bit further out, just to label those things. So that way they have a visual way to see that. is really helpful, but also to know that there's different kinds of boundaries. There's boundaries within yourself and there's boundaries with other people, that you can have both. And it's completely okay. In fact, it's encouraged to have different kinds of boundaries, whether it's with family, romantic relationships, your kids, your boss, yourself, your mind, your emotional experience. We can come up with a lot of different boundaries, but to notice those things that might throw you off. So knowing triggers, right? But also being mindful of how you feel when you cross a boundary that you have for yourself. Maybe that's being late to a reservation. If that's a boundary that you have, okay, how did you feel in that moment? If it's interacting with other people, let's say that you overshared for whatever reason, that you were trying really hard to fit in and you ended up sharing something that you are like, oh, I shouldn't have shared that. That wasn't my place to share that. That noticing that is really, really important too.
Yeah, those are very helpful. I think the other piece that I think may be important, I'll try it on, see what you think,
Sure.
is we have the fight, flight, freeze response. And I also wonder about the fawning response with HSP, the people pleasing. I will
100%.
go overboard to apologize, say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, and almost try to take on because of your discomfort and your fear, that fawn response, which is a survival state, which we can learn very young, that we don't want to make it wrong or bad. We want to thank it for its service. How big of a role does fawning play into HSP, do you think?
Huge. And I'm glad you brought that up because there's a big tie with that as well. So it's perfectionism, people pleasing, HSP. There's a big realm.
Triad.
Exactly. It's fun to explore that because if you don't have someone that's an HSP therapist that's informed on those things, they're not going to pick it up. But to be able to sit with somebody and be like, I know exactly what you're talking about when that happens, is amazing. I love therapy, obviously. But in terms of the fawning response, getting back to that piece, is that it can be all consuming. I have some clients that have said, oh, I shared too much about something, or I didn't share enough. And now I'm worried about my friendship. And so I'm obsessing. If I need to get back with them, I need to have a better friendship with them. I need to do all these extra things. It's like, whoa, slow down. I get it. I know where it's coming from. Like you said, we respect where fawning came from. However, I'm not sure that it's serving you the way that it needs to. I'm not sure that becoming obsessive, being super concerned about this one friend that may be really toxic in the first place, that may be ghosting you, is worth your time and energy. So I'm not sure if you trying to over apologize and bend over backwards to fit into their life and go visit them all the time is helping you. Have you experienced that with your clients as well?
Oh my gosh, yes. I have a case right now I'm thinking of. She came in and she said, I've realized that in this one friendship, I'm noticing my fawn response. And I took a deep breath. And instead of, saying, I'm sorry. Oh, that's fine. It's not a big deal. Oh, it's fine. She goes, I took a deep breath.
Okay.
She paused and she said, if you could tell me up front next time, that would be super helpful. Clear, direct. She recognized that with this particular relationship, she fawns a lot when she feels like the friend will say, are you mad at me? You seem mad at me. And then she would start fawning. And that insight is transformative because she'll take that recognition and acknowledge that her discomfort and her fear of disconnection was the fawn response. And then she learned that I feel worse when I fawn. I feel more disconnected with this person. Right. So I'm going to change it with more clear and direct communication. And she said the friend responded very differently. Not, are you mad at me? She said, okay, thank you for letting me know. So now we're not clear and direct. Fawning, there's no clarity in it.
Exactly.
So
that is beautiful.
I loved it. I was like, oh, you're seeing that how empowering. And it doesn't always go that smoothly for somebody. Yet it's not for the other person. It's for them to go, I see when I do fawning.
Oh, I'm so excited for your client.
I know. I love it.
It's really good when you set that boundary. It's like, yes, I am empowered. I feel okay.
And I can tolerate the discomfort of leaning into not fawning and trying something different. It's so helpful when we can give ourselves permission and work through that fear and discomfort to try something different.
Absolutely.
I love this conversation.
I do too. This is fun.
I'm so excited to offer that, the link to the quiz. Great. And are there any other takeaways that you want to say around highly sensitive people that are important that we didn't cover?
There's one thing I honestly have like 10 tabs open. I'm one of those people, many tabs. But the one thing that I wanted to share that's from the hsperson.com website, I'll send this to you as well, is there's an acronym called DOES, DOES. It stands for Depth of Processing, Overstimulation, Emotional Responsivity or Empathy, and Sensitive to Subtleties. So if it helps to remember that acronym and those bits of the acronym is, am I having a does moment? What are those things that are sticking out for me? Am I overstimulated? Am I really heavily processing this? Am I really feeling intense empathy with this person? Am I really sensitive to the subtleties, the small changes in the environment, the small changes in the air conditioning turning on? To know those things, that can help with being mindful as well.
Oh, thank you. I love that. Where can people find you if they're interested in learning more?
Absolutely. So I think just about every social platform ever, I'm on them at this point. So it's Sage Counseling and Wellness. I started my practice about a month and a half ago. So that's super
Congrats.
fun. Thank you. It's wonderful. So that's the place to find me is Sage Counseling and Wellness. I'm most active on Instagram, so feel free to follow me there. And then otherwise, you can go on my website, sagecounselingtherapyandwellness.com. Truly tons of blog posts everywhere, tons of information, good resources. I have a link to my Amazon storefront there. If you want a list of different things, there's a full HSP list on Amazon storefront if you want that as well.
Fantastic. I love resources, and so do my listeners. So we appreciate your heart in sharing your insight about HSP. And I'm so grateful for our time together, Rachel.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, DBoice, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.